This presentation is an analysis of Thomas Hardy's poems Hap and the Convergence of the Twain. Overview of Hap. Thomas Hardy's Hap is a poem depicting God or fate through the perspective of naturalism. Naturalism is the belief that God and nature are uninvolved in the lives of humans, do not care about humanity, and are neither good nor bad. It is the belief that humans cannot control their own destiny, unlike the romantic view that nature is benevolent and God can be found in nature. Because of the 19th century scientific discoveries, people questioned faith and God, and many authors, such as Hardy, felt life was controlled by fate or chance, not God. The erosion of traditional faith in Christian beliefs due to the discoveries in science and advancement of technology that came with the industrialization during the Victorian Age created a new way of looking at nature and God called naturalism. Analysis of Hap. In the first two stanzas, Hardy says, if God were vengeful like the Greek gods, telling him, "Thou suffering thing, know that thy sorrow is my ecstasy, that thy love's loss is my hate's profiting," then he could just be angry and accept the unfairness of life. But in the third stanza, he says this isn't so. In the third stanza, he says God isn't vengeful, but rather he doesn't care one way or another about humanity. There is no rhyme or reason as to why some are fortunate and some are not. Life is controlled by chance, and God is not involved. The tone of helplessness of this poem is common during the 20th century literature and is a reaction to the Victorian period, with its discoveries in science and major changes due to the Industrial Revolution and great pollution and the widening gap between rich and poor that all worked together to make people feel that they had no control over their own destinies. The world seemed out of control by the end of the Victorian period. In the poem, God is not capitalized, but doomsters and crass casualty are, suggesting Hardy's loss of faith and his gloomy view of the universe. Since Hardy wanted to at one time be a minister, he felt the loss of faith more profoundly than most. Analysis of the Convergence of the Twain. Thomas Hardy's poem, The Convergence of the Twain, also depicts nature through a naturalistic lens. This poem is about the famous Titanic ship that collided with a giant iceberg and sank, causing the death of 1,503 people, over half the people aboard. Tragically, one lifeboat only held 28 people and could have held 64. The Titanic was not equipped with enough lifeboats because the ship's builders were convinced that the boat was unsinkable, which we know in retrospect was foolish and untrue. Nature is depicted as almost malicious in this poem. It is as if nature punishes humanity for their pride. The downfall of those who created and sailed the Titanic was vanity. The first few lines refer to the salamandrine fires, since salamanders were believed to be able to withstand fire and still live. Thus, this line suggests the unrealistic pride of the ship captain to believe its fires, lights and electricity, could never go out. The poem shows nature's indifference to humanity through the sea worm that crawls all over the opulent jewels and riches at the bottom of the sea, with no regard or respect for their worth or value. Also, the fish in the poem can't comprehend the great loss of life and riches as they swim by the wrecked ship. There is a contrast between lightness and darkness and hot and cold in the poem, with the iceberg being cold and dark and the Titanic being lighted and hot or alive until it sinks. The word vainglorious in the poem is one of Hardy's invented words, which shows the vanity of the people who lose at the hands of fate. This poem is naturalistic in its message that fate controls our destiny by bringing the ship, representing humanity's vain accomplishments and pride, and iceberg, representing nature, into the fateful collision that represents the collision of humanity and nature, in which nature wins and humanity loses.